There's something I've been noticing more and more lately, not just in the markets, not just in business, not just online, in people generally. And it's this strange relationship people have with panic, because the moment panic appears, most people immediately interpret it as failure. Yeah, I'm weak, I'm failing, I'm losing control. Something's wrong with me. But I honestly don't think panic is the failure. I think panic is the signal. And those two are very different things, because a signal is information. A signal says something exceeded capacity, something feels unsafe, something became overloaded, something internally needs attention. But somewhere along the line, we stopped listening to the signal and started shaming ourselves for having one. And honestly, you see this everywhere now. People are exhausted, overstimulated, emotionally flooded, running on caffeine, stress, doom scrolling, comparison, financial pressure, lack of sleep, constant stimulation. And then wondering why the nervous system suddenly slams the alarm button. Of course it does. That isn't weakness, that's biology. Even markets show this behaviour beautifully. You can literally watch it happen on a chart. People don't usually collapse at the beginning of volatility. They collapse after prolonged uncertainty, after compression, after emotional fatigue, after overriding themselves for too long. That's when panic enters. And what's fascinating is markets expose nervous systems. You can tell who's regulated and who isn't, because volatile environments amplify what already exists internally. The market doesn't create emotional instability, it reveals it. That was a massive realisation for me personally, because years ago I used to interpret emotional activation as truth. I felt fear, sell. I felt pressure, react. I felt uncertainty, override harder, push more, force more, grip tighter. And ironically, that usually made things worse, because I wasn't responding to the signal intelligently. I was fighting it emotionally. And there's a huge difference there. A regulated person can experience panic without becoming panic. That's important. You can feel activation without identifying as the activation. That's operator behaviour. Observation before reaction. And honestly, that's a skill. Most modern life trains the opposite. Everything now is immediate reaction. Notifications, arguments, outrage, breaking news, financial fear, social comparison, constant stimulation. Most people's nervous systems never actually settle anymore. So eventually the body says, right, you're clearly not listening quietly. So now I'm turning up the volume. And panic becomes the volume increase. But again, that doesn't automatically mean failure. Sometimes it means rest. Sometimes it means slow down. Sometimes it means you've absorbed too much stress for too long. Sometimes it means your environment is dysregulating you. And sometimes it simply means your nervous system hasn't felt safe in years. That one's deeper. And I think a lot of people are quietly carrying that. Especially high-functioning people. The ones who still show up, still work, still smile, still perform, but internally, their nervous system is running permanently hot, always alert, always braced, always scanning. And eventually, the signal arrives. The fascinating thing, though, is once you stop treating the signal like an enemy, everything starts changing. Because observation creates space. You stop spiraling quite so fast. You stop immediately identifying with every emotion. You start recognizing, I'm activated right now, instead of I am broken. That distinction matters massively. And honestly, this changed the way I view markets as well. Not when volatility appears. I'm not reading candles anymore. I'm reading behaviour, absorption, fear, exhaustion, momentum, emotional flooding, liquidity reactions, behavioural tone. And weirdly, the calmer you become internally, the more clearly you start seeing externally. That applies to markets, relationships, business, life, all of it. Because clarity rarely arrives through force. It usually arrives through regulation. And that's probably the real point of this episode. Maybe panic was never proof you were failing. Maybe it was simply the signal asking you to finally pay attention. And those are very different things. This is the signal, and this is only episode 1.